The global motorcycle industry committed a calculated crime. They took the greatest category of motorcycles in human history and suffocated it in a corporate boardroom. For 2 decades, the 600 cubic centimeter Supersport was the undisputed king of the road, but not anymore. Today, the class is dead. Salesmen want you to believe new parallel twin sports bikes represent an upgrade. That is a lie. We will expose the forces that killed the Supersport, analyze the replacements, and reveal a terrifying truth. Begin the teardown. Chapter 1. The Golden Era of the 600 cubic centimeter Supersport, 1999 to 2008. To understand the tragedy of what we lost, you must understand the violence and the glory of the era we lived through. From 1999 to 2008, the Supersport category was not a market segment. It was a global sanguinary war. These machines behaved like 2 different motorcycles bolted together. The engine architecture utilized massive bore diameters and microscopic stroke lengths. Below 8,000 revolutions per minute, they were smooth, quiet, and manageable for city traffic. But the second you crossed 10,000 revolutions per minute, the engine came onto the cam. The ram air intake howled, and the motorcycle transformed into a screaming 120 horsepower missile. They offered 90% of the thrill of a 1,000 cubic centimeter superbike, but they were lighter, more agile in tight mountain canyons, and they were affordable for the working class. Let us count down the 3 titans that defined the golden era. Number 3, the 2006 Suzuki GSX-8R600. Seasoned track day mechanics argue the 2006 Suzuki GSX-R is the peak of the architecture. It was the moment where raw mechanical feeling intersected with early modern technology. Suzuki engineered a perimeter frame from cast aluminum sections, providing immense torsional rigidity while minimizing lateral flex. Suzuki equipped it with a slipper clutch from the factory. During high-speed, aggressive downshifts at the end of a long straightaway, traditional clutches locked the rear wheel, causing dangerous, unpredictable skids. The slipper clutch utilized internal mechanical ramps to disengage the clutch plates under heavy back torque, keeping the chassis stable entering tight corners. Suzuki introduced the Suzuki dual throttle valve system inside the massive throttle bodies. The human rider controlled the primary throttle butterfly via a steel cable, but the engine control module controlled a secondary electronic butterfly, optimizing intake air velocity to maximize mid-range torque delivery. The engine utilized lightweight titanium valves to survive the massive red line without suffering catastrophic valve float. The engineers bolted on radial-mounted Tokico brake calipers, gripping massive 310mm floating steel rotors, providing race-grade stopping power. It produced 125 horsepower at the crank and weighed a feather-light 354 pounds dry. This power-to-weight ratio allowed it to reach a terrifying top speed of 162 miles per hour. Suzuki priced this machine at $8,899. Suzuki mastered stability and braking performance. But what happens when a manufacturer builds a street machine derived straight from a multi-million-dollar MotoGP prototype? The Titan, sitting at number 2, rewrote the rules of chassis, geometry, and fuel delivery. Number 2, the 2003 Honda CBR 600RR. Honda had dominated the sales charts with the comfortable, pragmatic F4i, but Yamaha's ruthless aggression forced them to build a dedicated racing machine. The 2003 CBR was inspired by Valentino Rossi's RC211V racing prototype. It featured the iconic undertail exhaust system, routing the burning exhaust gases directly under the passenger seat to improve aerodynamic drag and increase lean angle clearance. Honda introduced programmed dual-stage fuel injection. This complex system utilized 2 injectors per cylinder. The lower injector operated at low engine speeds for smooth commuting, while the upper showerhead injector, mounted directly in the top of the airbox, activated at high engine speeds to dump massive amounts of atomized fuel into the intake bell mounts. This produced a massive top-end horsepower rush. Honda debuted the unit ProLink rear suspension. Instead of mounting the top of the rear shock absorber to the main aluminum frame crossmember, Honda mounted it directly to the heavy-duty swing arm, isolating the main chassis from violent suspension impacts. This provided unmatched mid-corner stability and prevented the frame from twisting under heavy acceleration. It delivered 117 horsepower and transferred that thrust through a close-ratio 6-speed cassette-style transmission. It pushed through the wind to a top speed of 158 miles per hour. Dealerships demanded $8,599 for this mechanical perfection. Honda engineered surgical precision and perfect balance, but the machine at number 1 birthed the entire generation of uncompromising middleweights. Prepare for the motorcycle that broke the ultimate horsepower barrier and changed the industry standard forever. Number 1, the 1999 Yamaha YZF-R6. When Yamaha dropped the original R6 in 1999, it was a mechanical earthquake. It shattered the industry illusion that middleweights had to be compromised, comfortable sport tourers with heavy steel frames and soft suspension. Yamaha built a razor-sharp track weapon and simply bolted headlights and turn signals to it. It was the first production middleweight to break the 100 horsepower barrier straight from the showroom floor. Yamaha utilized the Delta Box 2 aluminum frame. This twin-spar perimeter frame wrapped around the engine block, utilizing the engine cases as a stressed structural member, providing immense torsional rigidity for high-speed cornering. The engine utilized a radical short-stroke design featuring massive 37mm Keihin constant velocity carburetors and a punishing 12.4:1 compression ratio. The engineers focused on extreme weight reduction, utilizing magnesium engine covers, hollow camshafts, and lightweight cast alloy wheels to reduce unsprung rotational mass. The suspension featured massive 43mm fully adjustable front forks. The power delivery was violent. Below 7,000 revolutions, it felt sluggish. Above 10,000 revolutions, the front wheel lifted off the asphalt. It produced 120 horsepower and achieved a top speed of 160 miles per hour. In 1999, this track weapon cost $7,999 brand new. These screaming inline fours ruled the streets. But hidden within government legislatures and global financial markets, a massive storm brewed. The executioners sharpened their blades. The force sitting at number 5 destroyed a continent's entire youth market with a single stroke of a pen. Chapter 2. The 5 forces that killed the category. The Supersport did not die naturally. It was assassinated by impossible physics, corporate greed, and shifting global demographics. The Japanese factories fought to keep the assembly lines moving, but the regulatory bodies and economic realities built an insurmountable wall. Here's the countdown of the 5 forces that put the inline-4 middleweight in its grave. Force number 5, Europe's A2 licensing laws. This is the hidden legal dagger that bled the category dry. Europe dictates the global motorcycle market volume. The European Union instituted the A2 tiered licensing system to combat high youth mortality rates. Under A2 laws, a young rider is restricted to a motorcycle producing exactly 47 horsepower, with a maximum power-to-weight ratio of 0.2 kilowatts per kilogram. The law possesses a fatal caveat. You're allowed to buy a more powerful motorcycle and restrict it down to 47 horsepower via electronic engine mapping or mechanical throttle stops. But the original, unrestricted motorcycle cannot produce more than 94 horsepower from the factory. A modern Supersport produces 120 horsepower. Therefore, it is impossible to restrict a Yamaha R6 or a Kawasaki ZX-6R for an A2 license holder. The Japanese manufacturers lost the entire European youth market. If young riders cannot buy the entry-level machines, they do not develop brand loyalty, and they do not upgrade to the 1,000 cubic centimeter machines later in life. The factories needed a middleweight motorcycle that produced exactly 80 or 90 horsepower, so it could be restricted and sold to European teenagers. The screaming inline 4 was obsolete by legislative design. The youth market vanished, but the original riders were changing too. The force at number 4 proves that human bodies cannot endure endless pain, regardless of how much horsepower the machine produces. Force number 4 Aging demographics. The hardcore riders who bought the original Yamaha R6 and Honda CBR in the late 1990s aged out of the category. A supersport motorcycle is an ergonomic torture rack. The ergonomic triangle, the spatial relationship between the seat, the handlebars, and the foot pegs, is designed for pure speed, not comfort. The rear set foot pegs force the rider's knee into an acute flexion angle, cutting off blood circulation to the lower leg. The clip-on handlebars are mounted below the top triple clamp, forcing the rider to support their entire upper body weight on their wrists, placing devastating pressure on the carpal tunnel. Your cervical spine is folded in half, forcing you to crane your neck upward just to see the road ahead. When those original riders hit their 40s and 50s, their bodies refused to tolerate the physical abuse. The lumbar spine degradation made a 2-hour Sunday ride agonizing. They possessed disposable income, but they abandoned the supersport category. They transitioned into upright, comfortable adventure bikes like the BMW R1200 GS or stripped-down naked street fighters like the Yamaha MT-09, which feature wide tubular handlebars and relaxed foot peg positions. The target audience aged out of the pain, taking their bank accounts with them. Riders aged out, but the ones remaining faced a financial wall. The corporate actuaries at number 3 made ownership impossible for the working class. Force number 3, punishing insurance costs. Insurance companies operate on cold, hard actuarial data. The data surrounding the supersport was terrifying. You had 19-year-old kids purchasing 120 horsepower missiles that weighed less than 400 pounds. These machines possessed a power-to-weight ratio rivaling million-dollar supercars. Yet they possessed zero traction control, zero slide control, and lacked anti-lock braking systems. The crash statistics were a bloodbath. High-side crashes, where the rear tire loses traction, regains it, and launches the rider into the atmosphere, became epidemic. The insurance conglomerates responded with financial brutality. Actuaries calculated the frequency of single-vehicle accidents, the massive replacement cost of shattered plastic aerodynamic fairings, the cost of scratched aluminum frames, and the terrifying medical payouts for orthopedic surgeries. By the early 2000s, a young rider attempting to insure a brand new Yamaha R6 for full collision and comprehensive coverage was quoted an astronomical $3,000 a year in premium costs. The insurance cost, more than the financing payment for the motorcycle itself. This locked the entry-level youth demographic out of the market. If you cannot insure the machine, the bank will not approve the loan. If you cannot get the loan, you cannot buy the machine. Insurance killed the buyers, but a global economic event shattered the manufacturers. The event at number 2 stopped the production lines completely and starved the research departments. Force number 2, collapsing sales. In 2007, the market printed billions of dollars for the Japanese factories. In 2008, the global financial market collapsed. The subprime mortgage crisis destroyed discretionary spending across the entire planet. The primary demographic for these motorcycles, young blue-collar workers and college students, found themselves unemployed, drowning in debt, and incapable of securing financing for a $10,000 weekend toy. Dealership floor planning, the mechanism by which dealers finance their showroom inventory, froze completely. Repossessions skyrocketed. The sales figures were catastrophic. Within 5 years of the crash, global supersport sales plummeted by an astounding 80%. The multi-million-dollar research and development budgets that Honda and Yamaha relied on to update these track weapons vanished. Tooling new engine cases and designing new chassis geometry requires massive capital investment. Without incoming revenue, the manufacturers resorted to bold new graphics years. They changed the paint colors, updated the decals, and changed zero mechanical parts year after year. The bikes sat rotting on dealership floors for years, gathering dust. Without sales volume to justify the massive tooling costs, the factories shut down the development pipelines. Sales vanished, but the final nail in the coffin was an engineering brick wall. The force at number 1 made building these high-revving engines a physical crime against the environment. Force number 1, Euro 5 emissions. If you want to know what killed the inline 4, Look at the European Union emissions regulations. To make a small engine produce 120 horsepower, engineers must use massive valve overlap. This means the intake valves and the exhaust valves remain open at the same time for a fraction of a second at high engine speeds. This allows the incoming pressurized fuel-air mixture to blow the spent exhaust gases out of the cylinder, maximizing high-speed engine breathing and scavenging. It creates massive top-end horsepower, but it is an emissions nightmare. During that valve overlap, raw, unburned hydrocarbons blow out of the exhaust pipe and directly into the atmosphere. Under the strict Euro 5 regulations, this is illegal. To make a screaming engine pass Euro 5, engineers faced two terrible choices. Option 1, reduce the valve overlap via milder camshaft profiles, which would choke the engine, dropping the output from 120 down to a pathetic 90 horsepower, rendering the Supersport moniker useless. Option 2, install massive catalytic converters, secondary air injection systems, and ride-by-wire electronic throttle restrictions to control the combustion process and limit exhaust output. This adds immense weight, massive physical heat, and thousands of dollars to the manufacturing cost. The high-density catalytic converters required to scrub the nitrogen oxides require precious metals like platinum and palladium. The engineers looked at the stoichiometric math, realized it was impossible to maintain the high horsepower while meeting the emissions targets at a competitive price point, and threw in the towel. The inline 4 is dead, buried under emissions laws and insurance premiums. But the manufacturers refused to leave the middleweight market empty. They retreated to the laboratory and forged a different architecture. Are these new parallel twins worthy successors, or are they cheap compromises? The machine at number 3 sets a new standard for real-world usability. Chapter 3. The 3 new middleweights fighting to replace them. The Japanese and European factories abandoned the complex, expensive, high-revving inline 4. To survive the modern era, they pivoted to the parallel twin engine architecture. A parallel twin is cheaper to manufacture. It has half the camshafts, a single cylinder block, fewer throttle bodies, and it is easier to tune for strict Euro 5 emissions because it relies on low-end torque rather than high-speed valve overlap. Manufacturers can produce one parallel twin engine and place it into a sports bike, a naked street fighter, and an adventure bike, spreading the research costs across multiple platforms. Here are the 3 motorcycles fighting to claim the vacant throne, counting down to the new king. Number 3. The Suzuki GSX-8R. Suzuki rode the legendary championship-winning GSX-R chassis for well over a decade without a single major mechanical update. They stubbornly watched the global sales figures plummet and the European emissions regulations tighten like a noose. They finally accepted defeat, officially discontinued the screaming 4-cylinder engine that defined their brand for 30 years, and engineered an entirely new parallel twin platform from scratch. The brand new 8R completely abandons the traditional high-revving supersport formula. Suzuki utilized a massive, heavy-duty 776 cubic centimeter parallel twin engine. They explicitly engineered it to deliver maximum brutal thrust in the lower and middle revolutions per minute ranges, exactly where street riders spend 90% of their riding time. They utilized a 270-degree crankshaft. This specific uneven firing order mimics the aggressive throaty exhaust rumble of a 90-degree V-twin and delivers massive mechanical traction pulses directly to the rear tire. To combat the severe, hand-numbing primary vibrations inherent in parallel twins, Suzuki invented and patented the Suzuki Cross Balancer system. Instead of placing heavy balancer shafts parallel to the cylinders, they positioned 2 independent balancer shafts at exactly 90 degrees to the heavy steel crankshaft. This revolutionary engineering completely cancels primary engine vibration, resulting in buttery smooth power delivery that prevents your rearview mirrors from vibrating into an unreadable blur at highway speeds. They utilized a heavy-duty steel tubular frame instead of a complex rigid cast aluminum perimeter frame. This strategic design decision was executed to keep manufacturing costs low for the consumer and massively increase straight-line highway stability. The front suspension features premium Showa, separate function, big piston, inverted forks. This advanced suspension design separates the heavy steel spring mechanism in one fork leg from the hydraulic damping piston in the other, offering excellent controlled damping over rough, broken pavement. It produces a manageable 82 horsepower. But the absolute defining metric is the massive 58 pound-feet of torque that hits like a sledgehammer the exact second you twist the throttle off idle. You do not need to wait for the engine to spool up. The pulling power is instantaneous. You'll leave heavy urban traffic behind you at every single green light. Suzuki wrapped this torquey engine in comfortable street-biased ergonomics. The forged aluminum handlebars are raised significantly above the top steering yoke, saving your fragile wrists from supporting your body weight. The rider seat utilizes thick, plush foam padding. The entire suspension geometry is tuned to absorb broken city asphalt, deep potholes, and aggressive speed bumps rather than smooth glass racetracks. It is not a compromised track weapon. It is an incredible, logical street sports bike designed explicitly for the real world. Suzuki built a pragmatic street brawler, but the Italians refused to abandon exotic track performance and premium materials. The exotic twin sitting at number 2 is a sliced-in-half superbike that redefines middleweight electronics. Number 2, the Aprilia RS 660. The Italians refused to build a boring commuter bike, while the Japanese manufacturers surrendered to corporate budget constraints and built heavy, compromised parallel twins. Aprilia looked at the massive gap between the slow Japanese replacements and the hyper-expensive 200 horsepower superbikes. They completely refused to compromise. They built the ultimate middleweight bridge. The Aprilia RS 660 is the most advanced, uncompromising parallel twin on the global market. Aprilia took the massive World Championship-winning V4 engine from their elite RSV4 superbike and sliced the rear cylinder bank completely off. They utilized the exact same front cylinders, the exact same massive piston bore diameter, and the exact same high-flow cylinder head design. The resulting forward-facing parallel twin engine features a 270-degree crank pin offset. This specific mechanical configuration mimics the aggressive power delivery and the deep, throaty exhaust note of a traditional V-twin. It is a high-revving masterpiece that screams toward a 12,000 revolutions per minute redline. They bolted this engine into a hollowed-out aluminum twin-spar frame, but they did not just mount the engine block. They used the engine block as a stressed member of the chassis. By forcing the engine block to physically absorb the heavy cornering loads, they reduced massive amounts of chassis weight. The entire motorcycle weighs a featherlight 399 pounds, fully fueled. Furthermore, the asymmetrical aluminum swing arm pivots directly through the rear engine cases, isolating the main frame from violent lateral cornering forces and keeping the rear tire glued to the asphalt. It produces a massive 100 horsepower, but raw power is completely useless without control. What truly sets the Aprilia apart from every other middleweight is the elite electronics suite. Aprilia equipped it with the Aprilia Performance Ride Control System. This utilizes an aerospace-grade 6-axis inertial measurement unit. This supercomputer physically calculates the exact pitch, roll, and yaw acceleration of the motorcycle thousands of times a second, ensuring the rear tire never breaks traction unless you explicitly command it to. It provides cornering anti-lock brakes that allow you to grab a handful of brake mid-corner without tucking the front wheel, lean-sensitive traction control, adjustable wheelie control, multiple engine braking maps, and a flawless up and down bidirectional quick shifter. You can hold the throttle wide open and kick the gear lever upward without ever touching the clutch. To stop this missile, they bolted on premium Brembo M432 radial brake calipers and a radial master cylinder. It provides the premium, exotic feel of the old Supersports, but in a lighter, narrower, and ergonomically comfortable package. The forged aluminum clip-on handlebars are mounted above the top triple clamp, preventing the agonizing lower back pain and crushed wrists associated with vintage track weapons. The foot pegs are mounted lower, saving your knees from excruciating cramps. It is the closest thing to a true, uncompromised successor on the market today. Aprilia brought exotic tech and massive horsepower, but the final machine holds the absolute sales crown. The controversial replacement at number 1 enraged track day purists, but completely conquered the urban streets. Number 1, the Yamaha YZF-R7. When Yamaha discontinued the legendary street-legal R6, they faced massive global backlash from hardcore racing enthusiasts. The screaming inline-4 was a track day staple for 2 decades. To pacify the angry mob, they released the Yamaha R7. It utilizes the aggressive, stunning aerodynamic fairings of a superbike, featuring a central M-shaped air intake duct and piercing LED lighting. But underneath the aerodynamic plastic, it is a different animal. Because it lacks the wide 4-cylinder block of its predecessor, the R7 is physically narrower than the entry-level R3. It punches a microscopic hole in the atmosphere and slices through the wind like a scalpel. Yamaha took the bulletproof CP2 parallel twin engine from their MT-07 budget street fighter and shoved it into a sport-oriented frame. They stiffened the steel tubular chassis by utilizing rigid aluminum center braces near the swing arm pivot. This specific mechanical modification increases torsional rigidity for heavy track day cornering and prevents the frame from flexing under massive lateral loads. They upgraded the suspension, replacing the soft street forks with fully adjustable 41mm inverted front forks and a linkage-driven rear shock, featuring precise rebound and preload adjustment. They bolted on a premium radial mount Brembo brake master cylinder and 4-piston radial mount brake calipers to provide track-worthy stopping power and direct lever feel. They kept costs low by refusing to install complex ride-by-wire throttle electronics. It utilizes a traditional mechanical steel throttle cable. There is no complex 6-axis inertial measurement unit. There is no cornering anti-lock braking system. There is no engine braking management. It offers a raw, direct connection between your right wrist and the rear tire. It produces a mere 73 horsepower. It utilizes a 270-degree cross-plane crankshaft. This uneven firing order simulates the power delivery of a 90-degree V-twin, giving it a throaty, aggressive rumble and massive low-end thrust. Hardcore track junkies hate the R7. They call it an underpowered, cheap imposter compared to the old R6. They miss the soaring 15,000 revolutions per minute redline and the violent top-end horsepower rush. But for the street rider, it provides instant low-end torque exactly where you need it in heavy city traffic. The old R6 required you to slip the clutch at red lights just to keep the engine from stalling. The R7 pulls away from 0 miles per hour with zero effort. You do not need to scream the engine to pass a minivan on the interstate. You twist the throttle grip at 4,000 revolutions per minute, and the CP2 engine pulls forward with absolute authority. It is pure street pragmatism wrapped in aggressive superbike armor. The routine maintenance costs are fractional compared to an inline-4. The insurance premiums are affordable for a working-class rider. The new parallel twins are efficient, torquey, and logical. They represent the survival of the middleweight sports bike in a hostile regulatory environment. But the critical question remains. Are they better than the screaming engines we lost? And is the mighty 1,000 cubic centimeter superbike the next target for the executioner? The conclusion will shatter your illusion of the modern motorcycle industry. Chapter 4. Are these bikes better? And is the litter class next? If you walk into a dealership today and ask a salesman, he will swear that the new parallel twins are superior machines. He will point to the advanced electronics and the comfortable ergonomics, the improved fuel efficiency, and the usable street torque. Here's the grease-stained reality. On the public street, navigating through heavy urban traffic, stopping at red lights, and commuting to work, the new parallel twins like the Yamaha R7 and Suzuki 8R are better motorcycles. They provide instant torque off the idle. They do not require you to slip the clutch at stoplights to keep the engine from stalling. They run cool in gridlock traffic, whereas the old inline-4s would boil their engine coolant and roast your legs. The wider power band makes city riding effortless. The relaxed ergonomics prevent you from visiting a chiropractor every Monday morning. Look at Suzuki. They discontinued the legendary GSX-R1000 in the European and Japanese markets because they refused to spend the millions of dollars required to make the massive inline-4 engine comply with strict Euro 5 Plus emissions regulations. The Euro 5 Plus standards require advanced onboard diagnostics, tracking misfires, and catalytic converter degradation in real time. Suzuki looked at the engineering costs, looked at the dismal sales figures, and pulled the plug. The flagship that defined the brand for 3 decades is gone. Look at Yamaha. In an industry-shaking announcement, Yamaha declared that the iconic flagship YZF-R1 superbike will no longer be homologated for street use in Europe. It will be sold exclusively as a non-street legal track-only machine. They surrendered to the emissions laws, acknowledging that forcing a high-performance track engine to meet street emission standards ruins the performance and drives the retail price beyond consumer limits. The modern superbike produces over 210 horsepower. They cost over $25,000. They feature massive carbon fiber aerodynamic winglets to keep the front tire planted at 200 miles per hour. They require aerospace-grade electronic intervention systems, slide control, lift control, cornering anti-lock brakes, engine brake management, to prevent the rider from flipping the motorcycle backward the second they touch the throttle. The insurance costs for a $25,000 200 horsepower missile are astronomical. The target demographic is aging, and their bodies cannot endure the physical demands of piloting these weapons. The sales figures are declining. The manufacturers bleed cash, trying to extract tiny horsepower gains from naturally aspirated engines to win world superbike trophies, while the consumer market shifts toward naked street fighters, scramblers, and adventure tours. The era of the screaming, high-revving, complex inline-4 superbike roaming the public streets is drawing to a close. We are entering an era of forced corporate efficiency, parallel twin homogenization, and strict electronic governance. The motorcycle industry executed a massive cover-up to convince you that less horsepower, fewer cylinders, and more electronics equate to a superior riding experience. But you now possess the mechanical and economic truth. You know exactly how the legendary 1999 Yamaha R6 and 2006 Suzuki GSX-R forged a golden era, and exactly how the vicious combination of Euro 5 emissions, global financial collapse, and crushing insurance premiums put them in an early grave. You understand why the Yamaha R7 and the Aprilia RS 660 exist, not as glorious track weapons, but as necessary corporate compromises to survive a heavily regulated world. The raw, screaming soul of the inline-4 is gone forever, and the mighty superbike is already standing on the gallows. Click on the next video to continue the ride, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video.